You see it right now, don't you? Your salvia standing there in the July heat, those tall purple spikes that lit up your border in June, starting to fade at the tips, going brown, going tired. You want to reach in and fix it. Here is the truth most gardeners never hear. What you do to your salvia in these next 2 or 3 weeks of July decides whether you get one show this year or two. One flush of blooms or a second wave that carries you clear into September. And almost everyone gets this wrong. They do the gentle, obvious thing, the thing that feels kind, and they quietly cost themselves half a season of color. I know because I did it for years. I stood over my Salvia nemorosa with little scissors, snipping one spent flower at a time, feeling so careful, so responsible, and wondering why my plant just sat there sulking through August. There is single move, a specific cut, that the growers at the Royal Horticultural Society have been quietly using for generations, and it has a name and a proper window. Stay with me, because I am going to show you exactly where to make that cut and exactly which week to do it. And this works whether you planted your salvia this spring or you have been growing the same clump for 10 years. Let me show you what I mean, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Walk out to your salvia and look closely at one of those flower spikes. Really look. The top of the spike, the part that bloomed first back in June, is finished now. It has gone papery and brown. But run your eye down toward the base of that same stem, down where the leaves are, and you will very often see something small and green. Tiny new buds, side shoots, waiting. That is the whole secret in one glance. Your salvia is not dying back. It is asking you a question. It wants to bloom again, and it is waiting to see whether you will let it. Here is where nearly everyone goes wrong, and I count my old self right in that number. We treat the spent flowers like a problem to be tidied. We pinch off the brown tips one by one. We snip the dead flower heads and leave the long bare stems standing, and we call that deadheading. It looks neat for about a day, and then the plant just stalls, because that is not what your salvia is asking for. Snipping the very top off a spike tells the plant almost nothing. You have removed a little brown, yes, but you have left the whole tired stem in place, and that stem is still pouring the plant's energy into itself, holding it upright, keeping those low buds asleep. I learned this the hard way in a July I will never forget. I had a border of Salvia nemorosa, the variety called Caradonna, that dark stem, that violet spike, one of the most beautiful things I have ever grown. In June, it was breathtaking. By mid-July, it looked exhausted, flopping open in the middle, brown on top, and I did what I always did. I tidied it, snip, snip, snip. I removed every brown tip and felt very proud, and it gave me nothing. All of August, nothing. Just a green mound of leaves and a handful of sad little flowers, while my neighbor's salvia, 3 doors down, was blazing purple again by the end of the month. That difference, that gap between my tired green mound and her second wave of color is what this whole video is about. And if you want to go even deeper into the rhythms that keep a garden blooming season after season, let me tell you about something. I have written about exactly these moments: the overlooked cuts, the precise timing, the understanding of what a plant is actually asking for in a series of digital books called First Bloom, Deep Roots, and the Full Bloom System. They go further than any single video can, walking you through the whole arc of a perennial garden, from its first tentative spring to the confident abundance of late summer. You will find the details in the description below, and I think if this video is speaking to you, those books will feel like a natural next step. But for right now, let us get back to what your salvia is actually built to do, because once you understand the plant, the cut makes perfect sense. Salvia nemorosa and its cousins, the meadow sages, the woodland sages, evolved in open ground across Europe and Western Asia, where the summers are hot and grazing animals and weather knock the tops off things all the time. These plants are not delicate. They are built to be cut down and come roaring back. In the wild, when that first flush of flowers gets battered or browsed off, the plant responds by pushing new growth from lower down. That is the engine we're going to switch on. But here is the timing that matters, and this is the part the gentle tediers miss. That engine only fires strongly when the first flush is fading, not when it is finished and brown and long gone. If you wait until August, when the whole plant has given up and set seed, you have missed the window. The plant has already decided the season is winding down. That is why July is the month, not June, when the first show is still going, not August, when it is too late. Right now, in these middle weeks, when the tops are fading but the base is still green and hopeful. So the real question is no longer whether to cut, it is how far to cut. And that answer will probably surprise you, because it is much more than most people dare. Now, before I show you the cut, I have to warn you off the mistake that undoes even gardeners who know about cutting back. And it is the mistake I see most in the comments and the forums, people swearing they cut their salvia and still got nothing. It is feeding. We are kind people, we gardeners. When a plant looks tired, our instinct is to feed it, to give it a boost, to reach for the fertilizer and pour some love into the soil. It feels like the right thing. It feels generous. And with salvia in July, it can be the very thing that robs you of your second flush. Here is why. Most general garden feeds and most lawn and border fertilizers are heavy in nitrogen, that first big number on the label. Nitrogen drives leaves, lush, green, fast, leafy growth. And a salvia that gets a big shot of nitrogen in midsummer will happily take it and grow a great floppy mound of soft green foliage and give you barely any flowers at all. You will have fed the leaves and starved the show. I did this too, of course. The same summer I was snipping away like a fool, I also gave the poor things a generous feed of a high nitrogen lawn-type fertilizer, thinking I was helping them recover. I basically told the plant, forget flowers, just grow leaves, and it obeyed me perfectly. What salvia actually wants is lean living. These are Mediterranean-type plants at heart. They flower best in soil that is not too rich. In full sun, on the slightly hungry side, the Missouri Botanical Garden and just about every serious extension service will tell you the same thing, that salvias thrive in average, well-drained soil and resent being pampered with too much fertility. Rich, soggy, overfed ground gives you flop and disease and disappointment. So if your salvia is in a decent border and you improve that soil with a bit of compost back in spring, it needs no summer feed at all to give you a second flush. None. The cut is what triggers the blooms, not the feeding. If your plant is in a pot, that is the one exception, because pots run out of nutrients fast and the rain washes them through. For container salvia, I use a feed that is higher in potassium. that last number on the label, the one that supports flowering, something like a tomato feed at about half the strength it says on the bottle, maybe once a fortnight through the summer. Notice, half strength and potassium lead, not nitrogen lead. Gentle and lean, never a heavy green forcing hit. So we have two pieces now. Do not overfeed and cut properly rather than tidy. But there is a third thing happening in July, out of sight, down at soil level. And if you miss it, your salvia can go backward no matter how well you cut and feed. Let me take you down to the roots. July heat does something to salvia that catches so many people out, and it is almost the opposite of what you would expect from a sun-loving plant. Salvia loves sun, it loves heat, but it does not love wet feet, and it does not love drought stress at the wrong moment. And July is exactly when we tend to get the watering wrong in both directions. Here is the trap. In a hot spell, we panic and water a little bit every single day. A quick splash with the can or the hose, evening after evening. It feels caring, and it is one of the surest ways to weaken an established salvia. Those daily little sips keep the surface damp and lazy, so the roots stay shallow, hanging around the top of the soil where it is hot and dries out fastest. Then one hot day you skip or you go away for a weekend and the shallow-rooted plant crashes because its roots never learn to go deep. Worse, on heavy or clay soil, that constant damp around the crown, the base where the stems meet the roots, invites rot. Salvia crowns hate sitting wet. That is the #1 killer of the perennial sages over time. Not cold, not heat, but a soggy crown that rots away over a wet season. So here's what I do instead, and it is simple. I water salvia deeply and infrequently. When I water, I really soak it. I let the water run slowly into the ground so it goes down deep, and then I leave it alone until the soil, a couple of inches down, feels dry. In a normal summer, that might be once a week. In a real heat wave, maybe twice, but never a daily splash. Deep and rare trains the roots to dive down where the moisture and the coolness live, and a deep-rooted salvia will sail through a hot July that flattens its shallow-rooted neighbors. And I always water at the base. In the morning, keeping the crown and the foliage as dry as I can. Morning water means the leaves dry off through the day. Evening water sits overnight and invites mildew, that dusty gray coating that spoils the leaves in a muggy August. Now you can feel the picture coming together: lean soil, deep rare watering, and a proper cut instead of fussy tidying. But I have been promising you that cut, and I know some of you are watching this thinking, that is all very well for a young plant, but mine is old. Mine is a great woody, sprawling thing that flops open every year, and I am half afraid to touch it. So let me talk directly to you now, because this next part is for you especially. If your salvia has been in the ground for years, if it has gone woody at the base, if it splits open in the middle every June like an old book falling open and leaves a bare hole in the heart of the plant, I want you to lean in, because everything I am about to say is aimed straight at you and your established plant. You have not ruined it. You have not missed your chance. July is when you can bring it back. That flopping, that bare center, that splaying open is not a disease, and it is not your fault. It is simply what an unpruned perennial salvia does as it matures. The stems grow long and heavy. The first flush of bloom weighs the tops down, and the whole plant peels open from the middle. Most people either stake it, which looks like a plant in a cast, or they just live with the mess and assume the plant is past its best. It is not past its best. It is undercut. Here is the rescue, and you do it right now in July. Take your established, flopping, tired salvia and cut the whole thing back hard. Not a trim, a real cut. I take it down by about a half, sometimes more, right back to where I can see those fresh low leaves and little buds near the base. Every long, floppy stem, every bare spent spike cut down to that band of new growth low on the plant. Yes, you will be removing flowers that are still hanging on. Cut them anyway. Yes, for about a week or two, the plant will look shockingly bare, and you will wonder if I have led you astray. I promise you I have not, because within days, that hard cut wakes up every one of those dormant low buds. The plant, relieved of all that top-heavy weight, pushes fresh, compact growth from the base, and it rebuilds itself into a tighter, sturdier, rounder shape that does not flop. And on the tips of all that new growth come the flowers. A whole second flush on a plant that had already given up for the year. I did this for the first time on a monster of a salvia that I had nearly dug out in despair. It was a decade-old, woody, splayed flat, an embarrassment. One July, out of nothing but frustration, I sheared the whole thing back by more than half. My hands were shaking a bit, I will be honest. 3 weeks later, it was a neat green dome. By the last week of August, it was covered, absolutely covered in violet spikes, better than its June show had ever been. I have never looked back. If yours is really old and woody, right down at the base, so woody that even the bottom is bare sticks, you have one more move, and this is the deeper rescue. In early autumn or the following spring, you lift the whole clump and you split it. You dig it up, you find the young, vigorous outer growth around the edge, and you tear or cut that clump into pieces, throwing away the dead woody heart in the middle. Replant the young, healthy outer pieces into refreshed soil. That is how you make one tired old plant into 3 young, vigorous ones. And it is how the perennial salvias have been kept going in gardens for well over 100 years. Because these plants genuinely renew themselves best when they are divided every 3 or 4 years. An old salvia left undivided for a decade will slowly hollow out and weaken from the center no matter how well you cut it. Splitting is the reset button. But the cut, the July cut, is the thing you can do this very afternoon on any age of plant and see the reward within weeks. So let me finally take you right up to the plant and show you the exact cut, the one with a name, the one the finest gardeners in the country have been using for a very long time and almost never explain properly to the rest of us. There is a name for this cut, and once you know it, you will start to see it referenced everywhere in the old gardening world, though it is almost always explained badly or at the wrong time of year. It is called the Chelsea Chop. It gets that name from the Chelsea Flower Show, the great garden show held in London by the Royal Horticultural Society every year in late May. For generations, British gardeners have used the timing of that show as the reminder to go out and cut certain perennials back, and the technique became known as the Chelsea Chop. Most people who have heard of it think of it as a one-time thing you do in late May to stop tall perennials from flopping, and that is where the buried secret lives. Because for salvia, the truly powerful version of this cut is not only the May one, it is the second cut, the one you make now, in July, right after that first flush of flowers begins to fade. That is the cut hardly anyone talks about, and it is the one that hands you an entire second season of bloom. Here is exactly how I do it, and I want you to picture it with me. I take a clean, sharp pair of shears or secateurs. Clean matters because a dirty blade spreads disease between plants, so I wipe mine with a little disinfectant before I start. Then I look at the plant and find the level where fresh new growth is coming. Low down, that band of small green leaves and side shoots I showed you at the very beginning, I place my cut just above a pair of those healthy leaves or a visible little bud, and I take the plant down by about a third if it is younger, or as much as a half if it is a big established clump. Straight across the whole plant into a gentle dome shape, higher in the middle and lower at the edges if you like a rounded look, or simply level if you prefer. You are not being precious about each stem. You are giving the whole plant a firm, confident haircut down to that living green layer. The single most important rule is this: always cut down to a point where there are leaves or buds below your cut. Never cut into bare, leafless brown stem with nothing green beneath it, because a stem with no growth below your cut may just die back rather than resprout. Green below the cut, that is the whole discipline. Do this in the second or third week of July, as the first flush fades. And here is the timeline you can expect, because I want you watching for it. For about a week, honestly, it will look bare and you will doubt me. Within 10 days to 2 weeks, you will see fresh new shoots pushing all over the plant. And in roughly 4 to 6 weeks, so by the back end of August into September, you will have a second full flush of flowers on a compact, sturdy, unflopped plant right when most borders are starting to look tired and everyone else's salvia is a brown mess. The reason this works is pure plant science, and it is beautifully simple. When those first flowers fade and set seed, the plant thinks its job is done for the year. Making seed is the whole point from the plant's view. And once seed is forming, it shuts down flower production. By cutting the whole plant back before it can finish setting that seed, you interrupt that message. You force the plant to start again, and starting again means new shoots and new flowers. You are simply refusing to let it call the season over. And here is the small extra touch that turns a good second flush into a great one, the finishing move that the careful old growers knew. After you make that July cut, give the plant one deep, thorough watering at the base, a proper soak right down to the roots on the same day or the next morning. Not a feed, just water, deep and generous, once. That single deep drink after the cut fuels the burst of new growth exactly when the plant needs it, and then you go back to your deep and rare rhythm and leave it be. Cut one deep soak and patience. That is the entire secret. This is not something I dreamed up. This is the Royal Horticultural Society's own guidance on the Chelsea chop, and it is echoed by extension horticulturists across the United States who recommend shearing salvias and other repeat blooming perennials back after the first flush to trigger rebloom. The knowledge has been there the whole time. It just got buried under all that gentle, well-meaning, one flower at a time deadheading that we were all taught was the careful, proper way to look after a plant. The tediers meant well. They just never got told about the chop, or they were told to do it once in May and never learned about the second cut in July that unlocks the real reward. Now you have it. The same move the finest perennial gardeners use to keep their borders blooming into autumn, and it costs you nothing but 10 minutes and a little courage with the shears. I want you to think back to those tired browning spikes you were looking at when this video started. The ones you were about to gently snip tip by tip the careful way, the way that would have left you with a tired green mound all August long. You do not have to accept that anymore. In a single afternoon this month, with one confident cut and one deep drink of water, you can hand your salvia a whole second summer. That is the difference between a gardener who tidies and a gardener who understands. And I think you are the second kind. You did not click on this because you wanted your plant to merely survive. You clicked because you love that plant, because you have watched it come up faithfully year after year, and because you refused to lose a single week of its color to advice that was quietly wrong. So here is what I want you to do for me. Go out this week before July slips away and find the salvia you are going to chop first. Then come down to the comments and tell me. Which salvia is it? What variety? How many years have you grown it? And are your hands shaking a little at the thought of cutting it back by half? Tell me. I read these and I want to hear how your second flush comes in. And while you are there, tell me where in the world you are gardening from, because a July in the south of England is a very different July from one in Texas or Ontario, and it helps me help you. If you made it this far, you are exactly the kind of gardener I make these for. People who refuse to let a plant they love struggle because nobody ever told them the one thing that mattered. That is who we are here. So come along with us, because there is always one more overlooked cut, one more perfectly timed touch that separates a garden that survives from a garden that sings. And I will tell you now what is coming next so you can start watching your own border for it. In just a few weeks, as summer tips over into early autumn, your salvia is going to face one last decision that most people get completely backward, and it is all about what you do or do not do to those stems as the nights turn cold. Get it wrong and you risk the whole plant over winter. Get it right and it comes back stronger than ever next spring. I will show you exactly where the line is and which week to act. So keep an eye out, and I will see you in that next one. Until then, go make that cut. Your salvia is waiting for it, and it is going to reward you more than you can imagine. If this spoke to you, come a little further with me. Inside the Blooming Garden Circle, I pick up exactly where this video stopped and walk you through the full perennial bloom system. And you can ask me your own questions. A real person, me, answering you. You'll belong right alongside gardeners just like you. Just point your phone's camera at the code on your screen, and you can cancel any time with one click. If this helped your salvia, do stay with me. Go ahead and subscribe and look through my other videos here on the channel. There's plenty more simple garden help waiting for you.